One word can stay inside you for years. Someone said something to you once. It was quick and casual. They probably forgot it minutes later. But you carried that word home with you. You replayed it before you fell asleep. You turned it over in your mind the next day. And the day after that it still stung. The person who said it moved on entirely. They laughed and talked and lived their life. Meanwhile you sat alone with the bruise. You pressed on it again and again. You wondered why it still hurt so much. Maybe it happened at your workplace. Maybe it came from someone in your family. Maybe it was a friend you deeply trusted. A single sentence landed on your chest. It sat there like a stone you could not lift. Days passed and the weight stayed the same. The one who placed it there felt nothing. That silence from them made it worse. It made the ache feel hollow and cold. You started to wonder what was wrong. Not with them but with yourself. Why did such a small thing cut so deep? Why could you not just brush it off? Why did your heart feel so fragile? This is a question worth sitting with. Because the answer changes everything. It changes how you see yourself. It changes how you relate to others. It changes how you move through the world. Some people walk through life with ease. They absorb hard words without flinching. They face conflict and stay grounded. You can feel their steadiness near you. It is not that they feel nothing. They feel everything just like you do. But something inside them is different. Something inside them is wider. There are others who shatter easily. The smallest comment throws them off. A sideways glance ruins their whole day. They spiral fast and pull others along. The people near them walk on eggshells. The air around them feels electric. Not with energy but with tension. We often describe this difference simply. We say some people have a big heart. We say others have a small one. But what does that really mean? What is this inner space we speak of? Is it just a personality trait? Is it something you are born with? Or is it something you can build? The truth is it can be built. It can be stretched and deepened. It can be shaped through experience. And it can grow at any age. That is what this whole story is about. The inner vessel of the human heart. How it forms and how it breaks. How it heals and how it expands. Let us begin with the beginning. Let us go back to childhood. A psychoanalyst named Marcus Langford. He spent his life studying the mind. He focused on how we process feelings. He discovered something powerful. He said every human mind has a vessel. A container that holds our emotions. This container is not physical. It is psychological and deeply real. It determines how we handle pain. It determines how we hold anxiety. It shapes how we respond to the world. Langford watched how mothers and babies. He saw a pattern that repeated itself. When a baby cries out of fear, the mother receives that raw emotion. She does not panic alongside the baby. She holds the feeling inside herself. She processes it and softens it. Then she returns it in a safer form. Maybe through a gentle voice. Maybe through a calm embrace. Maybe through a steady presence. The baby feels the shift happen. The terror becomes something bearable. The chaos becomes something manageable. Langford called this process containment. It is one of the most important ideas in all of modern psychology. Here is how it works step by step. The baby sends out raw emotions. These are wild and unprocessed feelings. Fear and rage and confusion and need. The baby cannot handle them alone. They are too big and too overwhelming. So the baby projects them outward. The mother catches those emotions. She does not reject them or ignore them. She takes them into her own vessel. Inside her they are transformed. The sharp edges become smooth. The screaming noise becomes a whisper. Then she gives them back to the child. In a form the child can absorb. In a form the child can survive. This happens thousands of times. Over months and years of early life. Each time the cycle completes itself. The child builds a little more capacity. A little more space opens up inside. The vessel of the child grows wider. Eventually the child can do it alone. They can catch their own raw feelings. They can soften them on their own. They can sit with discomfort and survive. This is what it means to grow up. Not just physically but emotionally. To become an adult in the truest sense means performing containment for yourself. It means holding your own darkness without needing someone else to carry it. A person with a wide inner vessel is not someone who never gets angry. They are not cold or emotionless. They are not above feeling pain. They feel anger just like everyone else. They feel sadness just as deeply as you. But here is what makes them different. They hold those turbulent feelings inside. They let them settle in that wide space. They watch the storm without becoming it. They wait until clarity arrives. Then they respond with care and thought. They do not suppress what they feel. They contain it and then transform it. That is a huge difference. Suppression pushes feelings underground. Containment gives them room to breathe. One creates pressure and explosion. The other creates depth and wisdom. Let me tell you about someone now. There was a team leader at a company. His name was Gerald and he was sharp. He had risen through the ranks quickly. He was known for his high standards. Everything had to be done perfectly. Every report had to be flawless. Every deadline had to be met exactly. On paper he seemed like a great leader. But the people who worked under him, they told a very different story. Whenever someone made a small mistake, Gerald could not handle it at all. A typo in an email enraged him. A missed detail made him explode. He would raise his voice immediately. He would point out the failure publicly. He would make the person feel small. To Gerald, every mistake was personal. It felt like an attack on his work. It felt like a threat to his success. He could not separate the two things: the mistake and his sense of self. They were tangled together tightly. So he reacted with sharpness always. The team walked on thin ice daily. People stopped taking creative risks. They hid their errors whenever they could. And hidden errors grew into disasters. The more they concealed, the worse it got. Projects failed in bigger ways later. Morale dropped to almost nothing. Good employees started leaving quietly. The team was falling apart slowly. And Gerald could not see why. He blamed everyone else around him. He thought they were all incompetent. He never once looked inward at himself. His vessel was incredibly narrow. It was like a thin glass tube. Even one grain of sand dropping in would cause the whole thing to crack. His anxiety had nowhere to settle. His frustration had no room to cool. So it spilled out constantly onto everyone within his reach. He was not a bad person at heart. He was a person with a tiny vessel. He had never learned to contain himself. No one had taught him how. Maybe his own childhood lacked that mirror. Maybe no one held his emotions for him. Maybe he never had a Langford mother. Someone to catch and soften his fears. Whatever the reason, the result was clear. His inability to hold his own pain made him spread that pain to others. Now let me show you the other side. There was someone named Patricia. She had worked with a colleague for years. They had built a deep professional bond. They shared projects and late nights. They covered for each other constantly. Patricia trusted this person entirely. Then something happened that shocked her. That colleague took credit for her work in a major presentation to leadership. Patricia's ideas were presented as theirs. Months of Patricia's effort were stolen. The betrayal was sharp and sudden. People around her were furious for her. They expected her to retaliate hard. They expected tears or angry outbursts. But Patricia stayed remarkably composed. She did not lash out or scream. She did not send an angry email. She did not gossip to co-workers. People were confused by her calm. They asked her how she could be so still. Her answer was simple and profound. She said there must have been reasons why that person chose to do that. Maybe they were under pressure I cannot see. Maybe they were afraid of something real. And my life will not crumble over this. One incident does not define my world. Patricia took that enormous wave of hurt. She held it inside her wide vessel. She let it sit there without reacting. She waited for the turbulence to calm. She knew how to wait with patience. She had practiced this many times before. Rather than drowning in the emotion, she stood in the position of observing it. She watched the pain without becoming it. Eventually clarity came to her. She addressed the situation with dignity. She spoke to her colleague directly. She expressed what she felt honestly. But she did so without cruelty. The outcome was far better for it. What these two stories show us clearly is the same single truth about humans. The size of your inner vessel matters. But not in the way you might think. It is not about whether you feel things. Everyone feels things deeply inside. The question is how much space you have to hold those feelings before you react. Gerald felt his emotions and exploded. Patricia felt hers and held them first. Both of them experienced real pain. But only one had the room inside to let the pain settle before acting. So what should you do with this knowledge? First, let us correct a common mistake. Most people believe their hearts will calm only when their circumstances improve. We think if the job gets better, if the relationship gets easier, If the money situation changes, then we will finally feel at peace. But that is completely backwards. The true size of your heart reveals itself when things are at their absolute worst. That is when the vessel is tested. Anyone can be calm on a good day. Anyone can be patient when life is easy. The real measure of your inner space shows up during the storms of life. When your heart becomes a deep vessel that stays steady no matter what enters it, that is when you begin to mature. That is when real growth takes root. So ask yourself this question honestly. What is the state of your vessel now? Is it a teacup that overflows quickly? With even the tiniest provocation? Is it a shallow bowl that spills often? At the first sign of turbulence? Or is it a deep and quiet lake that can receive even muddy water and slowly purify it from within? Whatever your answer is right now, it is okay and it is honest. Because here is the hopeful truth. Your vessel can always grow wider. It can deepen at any point in life. The stretching never has to stop. But psychology raises a deeper question. Is having a small vessel really just about emotional regulation and self-control? The answer is no, it is not. The real cause goes much deeper. It lies in how many perspectives you are able to see the world through. At the School of Education at Harvard, a researcher named David Ellison spent decades studying adult development. He discovered something remarkable. He found that psychological growth in adults happens in clear and distinct stages. It is not just one smooth process. There are specific levels of maturity. Each one changes how you see reality. When someone has a small vessel, usually they are absorbed in their own view. They see the world through the lens of self. Everything is filtered through me and mine. My needs and my desires come first. My perspective is the correct one. Anything that contradicts my view is a threat. This is not selfishness exactly. It is a developmental stage. It is where many adults remain. Not because they are bad people, but because growth requires specific challenges. As a person moves to a higher stage, something incredible begins to happen. They can see their own perspective clearly. And at the very same time, they can also see another person's view. Both perspectives exist simultaneously. Neither one cancels out the other. This is a massive shift in capacity. It means you can disagree with someone and still understand why they believe it. You can feel hurt by someone's actions and still see the pain behind their choice. You can hold two truths at once, even when those truths seem to conflict. And amidst all that contradiction, you develop an unshakable center inside. Let me share a story to illustrate this. There was a man named Douglas. He was the head of his household. He had worked his entire adult life to provide for his family fully. He sacrificed vacations and hobbies. He gave up personal dreams willingly. Everything he did was for his children. He had a specific vision for his son. He imagined his son following his path, maybe even surpassing his achievements. This vision gave Douglas deep purpose. It made all his sacrifices feel worth it. Then one day his son came to him. His son announced a completely different plan. He wanted to pursue a creative career. Something Douglas had never imagined. Something far from the path he had built. Douglas was shocked to his core. At first it felt like a slap. It felt like his authority was challenged. It felt like his years of sacrifice were being thrown back in his face. He erupted with anger immediately. He said words he would later regret. "I gave everything I had for you. I worked my whole life for this family. How could you turn your back on me?" That sense of betrayal hit him hard. This is the picture of a narrow vessel. Douglas was trying to contain his son within the small frame of his own thinking. He could only see one perspective. His perspective was the only valid one. Any deviation felt like rejection. Any difference felt like disrespect. But something shifted inside Douglas. It did not happen overnight at all. It happened slowly through reflection. He started to examine his own reaction. He started to question his own rigidity. Instead of seeing his son's choice as a rejection of everything he built, he began to see it differently. He began to see his son as a person, an independent individual with real dreams, someone with their own valid perspective. He started to accept something difficult. My thoughts and my son's thoughts can be completely different from each other. And that difference is not a betrayal. It is simply the truth of two lives. Accepting that fact was painful. It required Douglas to stretch himself. He had to build strength inside. The strength to endure that difference. To sit with the discomfort of it, without trying to force his way. Over time, Douglas expanded his vessel. He made room for his son's reality. He stopped demanding conformity and sameness. He started listening with genuine curiosity. And something beautiful happened then. The relationship that had nearly broken was rebuilt on a much deeper foundation. It was filled with a trust so solid that it surpassed anything they had before. Douglas did not eliminate the conflict. The disagreements still existed between them. But he grew a heart large enough to hold that conflict inside it comfortably. That is what expanding the vessel means. Not removing the hard things from life, but making enough room inside yourself to hold the hard things with grace. A person with a truly wide vessel never falls into black and white thinking. They do not say this is right, and that is completely wrong forever. They do not say that person is bad, and I am the innocent victim always. This kind of simple binary thinking is the most dangerous trap for the heart. It is the thing that shrinks the vessel faster than anything else in life. When you divide the world into two camps, good and evil and right and wrong, you lose all the space in between. And that space in between is where real understanding lies and grows. On the other hand, something opens up. When you understand a simple truth, there are many things in this world that simply happen without clear reason. People make mistakes without malice. People fail without intending to hurt you. The world is messier than our categories. When you accept the imperfections of others, just as they are without conditions, Your inner world expands without limit. It stretches in directions you never imagined. The person who causes you pain right now, they may also be struggling deeply within their own wounds and their own fears. They may be a soul fighting to survive, just like you are fighting to survive. The moment you truly realize that, something shifts inside your chest. Your vessel has already grown larger. Large enough to hold them and more. Large enough to hold compassion for all. Are you right now unable to forgive? Is there someone who hurt you deeply? Is there a situation that haunts you still? Something you replay and cannot release? Perhaps that suffering you carry around is not really about that person at all. Perhaps it is not about the situation. Maybe it is a signal from within, telling you something important and true. The space in your heart right now might be a little too small to hold it. That is not a criticism of you. It is an invitation to grow wider. Try something small but meaningful today. Let go a little of being right. Loosen your grip on your own story. Just a tiny fraction is enough. And in that space that opens up, fill it with someone else's experience. Try to imagine their circumstances fully. Walk a few steps in their shoes. Practice holding two truths at once. Your truth and theirs side by side. This is not weakness or surrender. This is the first step toward becoming the kind of person you deeply admire. The kind of person with real character. There is another powerful commonality among people who have wide vessels. They are not simply people who endure. They do not just tolerate everything silently. That is actually not what this is about. Instead, they are people who leave open the door to their own inner space, so that the pain of others can enter. They allow themselves to be affected. They let other people's struggles touch them. That willingness is not weakness at all. It is the deepest kind of strength. A psychologist named Leonard Graves. He founded a field called self-psychology. He studied how people develop self-worth. He discovered something truly important. He found that the people around us play a critical role in our growth. Those who support our psychological development. He gave them a specific name. He called them mirrors of the self. Just as a child who receives empathy in their earliest and most fragile years grows up feeling they are worthy, feeling they have value as a person. We as adults can do the same thing. When we become a warm mirror for someone, when we reflect back their worth to them, when we show them they matter deeply, something remarkable happens in return. Not only does that person begin to heal, but our own vessel expands as well. Our own capacity for holding life grows. Every time we hold space for another, we are stretching our own inner walls. This is the beautiful paradox of growth. By giving, we receive more space. By holding others, we hold more of ourselves. By being generous, we become wider. Let me share a story about a couple. The wife was named Catherine. She tended to feel hurt quite easily. Small things could wound her deeply. A tone of voice or a forgotten plan. An offhand comment or a distracted look. She had significant emotional swings. Her moods could shift without much warning. Her husband was named Thomas. He considered himself a rational person. He prided himself on being logical. He believed he was broad-minded and fair. Whenever Catherine became upset by something, Thomas would respond with cold logic. He would say, "Why is that even an issue?" He would say, "You are overreacting again." Or he would shut down completely. He would go silent and walk away. He would retreat to his own space. Thomas thought he was being mature. He thought emotions were the problem. He thought Catherine was too sensitive. He thought if she could just be logical, everything between them would be fine. But here is what Thomas did not see. He had no room inside for her feelings. Her emotions felt like an invasion. They threatened his sense of inner peace. He saw her feelings as an intruder, something that disrupted his calm world. So he either fought them with logic, or he ran away from them entirely. Though he appeared rational on the surface, Thomas was actually a narrow vessel. He could not hold emotions at all. Not his own and especially not hers. His rationality was a defense mechanism. It was a wall, not a wide space. Then one day Thomas had a realization. It came after a particularly bad fight. Catherine had been upset about something. He had responded with his usual dismissal. She had cried and he had felt nothing. But later that night something shifted. He looked at his wife sleeping beside him, and he felt a deep wave of sadness. Not for himself but for her. He saw how alone she must have felt. All those times he had shut her out. All those times he had called her dramatic. She was not asking for his solutions. She was not asking for his logic. She was asking for one simple thing. She wanted to be seen and understood. Thomas decided to change his approach. The very next time Catherine got upset, he did something completely different. Instead of seeing her anger as a problem that needed to be fixed or dismissed, he looked at what was behind her anger. He saw how much she wanted connection. He saw how deeply she needed his care. He said something he had never said before. "You must have had a really hard day. I was not being thoughtful enough for you." He did not try to solve anything. He did not explain or rationalize. He simply reflected her emotions back, like a clear and honest mirror. He showed her that he saw her pain. And something remarkable happened next. The emotional storm calmed almost instantly. Catherine's anger dissolved into relief. She felt seen for the first time in years. The tension between them melted away. What had seemed like an impossible problem was transformed by a simple shift. Thomas did not change Catherine at all. He changed the space between them. He made room inside himself for her. That is what growing the vessel means. In the context of relationships specifically, it means developing the capacity inside to invite someone else's emotions in, and to stay with them in that space. Not to fix or change or solve, but to simply be there together. Thomas did not try to change his wife. He became a space where she felt safe. A place where she could lean and breathe. That made all the difference for them. But a deeper question emerges here. How is that kind of space maintained? How do you hold it open over time? without burning out or losing yourself? We can find the answer in the work of a psychoanalyst named Arthur Pemberton. He studied the earliest human relationships. He looked at how children develop trust. He said something that changed the field. A good caregiver is not someone who solves every problem for a child, who fixes every confusion and fear, who rushes in to make it all better. Instead, a good caregiver is someone who quietly stays present nearby while the child works through things alone. The caregiver does not abandon the child. They stay close and available always. But they do not take over the process. They trust the child to find their way. They hold the space open with patience. Pemberton called this the holding space. It is an environment of safety, where growth can happen naturally, where the person does not feel alone, but also does not feel controlled. If we bring this idea to adult life, it changes how we see our role. When you see someone struggling with something, a mistake or a flaw or a failure, your first instinct might be to fix it, or to point out what they did wrong, or to offer advice immediately. But what if you did something else instead? What if you just stayed present quietly? What if you held the space open for them, without rushing to fill it with words, without trying to correct their path, just patiently waiting with steady calm, until that person can rise on their own? That patience is the vessel in action. That quiet presence is true strength. Let me tell you one more story now. There was a man named Richard. He had run a large business for decades. He had built it from the ground up. His name was known in his industry. People respected him and sought his advice. He had employees who depended on him. He had a reputation for being strong. Then everything collapsed all at once. A series of bad decisions and bad luck. His business failed in a spectacular way. The news spread quickly through his circle. People he had known for 20 years. Colleagues and partners and associates. They all began to distance themselves. Phone calls went unanswered for weeks. Invitations to gatherings stopped coming. The silence was louder than any criticism. Richard branded himself a complete failure. He could not look at himself in the mirror. He felt that everything he had built had been proven to be a worthless lie. His self-worth shattered into pieces. The vessel of his heart collapsed inward. It could barely hold anything at all. He went through his days like a ghost, eating without tasting and sleeping poorly, wondering if there was any point at all to continuing forward in this life. But there was one person who was different. A friend named Walter had known him long. Walter did not disappear like the others. He did not offer empty encouragement either. He never said things like "stay positive." He never said everything happens for a reason. He never minimized what Richard felt. He did something much more powerful instead. Walter simply came by once a week. He would show up at the same time. He would bring something simple to eat. They would sit together and share a meal. Sometimes they talked about old memories. Sometimes they sat in complete silence. Walter never tried to fix Richard. He never offered business advice or plans. He never pushed Richard to move forward. He just stayed present and available. Week after week without fail or question. Nothing was resolved during those visits. No problems were solved over those meals. But something was happening beneath the surface. Walter's vessel was quietly holding Richard's shattered sense of self inside it, like a deep lake receiving broken pieces and letting them settle to the bottom, slowly and gently without any force. When time passed and Richard eventually rose, he rebuilt himself in a different way. He was humbler and more compassionate now. He understood failure from the inside out. And he looked back on that dark period with one very clear and certain thought. He said, "My friend's silence saved me. That generous heart that fully received me at my absolute lowest point in life. That was the only ground solid enough on which I could stand up again." If you think about your own life now, you will find moments just like this. Times when someone's vessel held you up, when you were too broken to hold yourself. Maybe it was a parent or a friend. Maybe it was a teacher or a mentor. Maybe it was a stranger on a hard day. Someone who stayed beside you quietly. Someone who listened without judging you. Someone who saw you at your worst and did not flinch or turn away. Those people had wide vessels inside them, and their vessels saved you in those moments. A person who is truly large in spirit does not try to control other people. They do not impose their views on others. They do not demand that people change. Instead, they become a safe space, a place where others can lean and rest when they see someone's shortcomings clearly. Rather than judging by their own standards, they think to themselves with compassion. I can understand how that might happen. I can see how someone could end up there. And they give that person room to breathe, room to figure things out on their own. That is the essence of holding strength. That is what Pemberton spoke about deeply. It is one of the most powerful things a human being can offer to another. Is there someone beside you right now who quietly watches over your struggles? Who stays near when you are wavering? Who does not try to fix you constantly, but simply holds the space open for you? Or perhaps you are that person for someone. Maybe you are the steady, solid ground that someone else stands upon today. If so, you should know something important. What you are doing matters profoundly, even if it feels small and invisible. Now I want to take this even further. So far we have talked about two things: the vessel that holds our own emotions, and the vessel that holds our relationships. But psychology does not stop there. It goes one more crucial step forward. The full completion of the inner vessel is not achieved through personal effort alone. You cannot stretch it by yourself entirely. The vessel is ultimately completed within the relationship of us together, within the fabric of community and connection. This is not just a story about you. It is a story about all of us. A psychologist named Raymond Sinclair. He founded a school of individual thought. He gave us a very important concept. He called it the feeling of community. What Sinclair meant by this feeling was not simply getting along with people. It was not about being friendly or nice. It went much deeper than social skills. It was the sense that you as a being are part of something much greater. You are connected to other human lives. You belong to a web of shared existence. That connection is not optional or extra. It is the very root of mental health. It is the foundation of psychological stability. Sinclair said this with absolute clarity. When you fill your vessel with only yourself, with only your own benefits and emotions, the vessel stays small no matter what. It has a ceiling it cannot surpass. But when you keep your vessel open toward other people and toward society, when you let the world pour in freely, then the vessel expands without any limit. It becomes as wide as you allow it to be. There is no maximum capacity at all. Let me tell you about someone named Harold. Harold had worked for over 30 years. He had a successful and distinguished career. He was respected and well compensated. Then the day of his retirement arrived. At first it felt like a well-earned rest. But within a few months something changed. The sense of purpose began to drain away. The structure of his days dissolved entirely. He woke up with nothing meaningful to do. Decades of professional achievement suddenly felt distant and irrelevant to his life. He began to feel profoundly useless. The vessel of his heart shrank dramatically. It contracted to its smallest possible size. There was nothing left to hold inside it. No purpose and no meaning and no direction. The feeling of being unnecessary in the world settled over him like a heavy blanket. That emptiness felt absolutely bottomless. It seemed like nothing could ever fill it. He questioned whether he mattered at all. He wondered if his life had any value left. This is what happens when the vessel closes. When it has nothing flowing through it. When it is disconnected from the wider world. It collapses under its own emptiness. But then something unexpected happened. Harold heard about a local program. It was designed for young people nearby. Kids in his neighborhood who needed guidance. At first he signed up casually. He thought it would just fill his time. Something to do on Tuesday afternoons. A way to get out of the house. But as he began to spend time with them, as he listened to their worries and concerns, as he heard about their struggles and dreams, something started to shift inside him. He shared his own experiences openly. Not just the successes but the failures too. He told them about times he had been lost. About moments when he had doubted everything. About the mistakes that had taught him the most. And the young people listened intently. They saw in Harold someone who understood. Someone who had walked through real difficulty. Someone whose words carried honest weight. Harold experienced a remarkable change then. He realized something that surprised him deeply. Even his own wounds and past failures could become precious nourishment for someone else. His pain was not wasted after all. His struggles had a purpose he never imagined. They could help light the way for others. The moment he truly understood that fact, the vessel that had been closed for so long opened wider than it had ever been before. It was like a dam breaking open gently, letting water flow into a dry valley. Now Harold's vessel was not holding personal comfort and safety alone anymore. It was filled with something much larger. The love of wanting to help someone grow. The deep responsibility of mentoring youth. The connection to his community around him. He was no longer living for himself only. He was living as part of a greater whole. And that connection healed him completely. This brings us to the most important part. The final truth that ties it all together. Growing the vessel of your heart is ultimately the process of emptying yourself. Making room inside for other people. Contributing something real to someone's life. And feeling that deep sense of connection. Sinclair said this with firm conviction. That this is the most solid root possible. The root that sustains all human well-being. The root that holds us upright in storms. When your heart feels narrow and tight. When the world feels small and suffocating. When you cannot find room to breathe inside. Try turning your gaze outward from yourself. Look for something you can give to someone. Look for a way to lighten someone's load. It does not have to be enormous or grand. A small act of kindness is more than enough. A moment of genuine attention to another. A word of honest encouragement offered freely. When those small things begin to accumulate, day after day and week after week, something wonderful happens without fanfare. Your vessel grows wider and deeper quietly. Before you even realize it has changed. It becomes generous enough to hold the world. We are all working on this same project. Every single one of us without exception. We are all potters shaping our own vessels. Working at our own pace with our own clay. Sometimes the kiln of hardship fires us. The heat is intense and almost unbearable. Sometimes the wounds of life crack our walls. Pieces break away and we feel exposed. But here is something truly beautiful. Through those cracks, light finds its way in. It enters through the broken places first. And as we fill those gaps with patience, with compassion and with honest reflection, we become something far more resilient, far more beautiful than we were before, more beautiful than any perfect vessel, because a vessel that has been broken and mended carries a depth that smooth surfaces never can. Do not strive for perfection in yourself. A perfect vessel is a lifeless thing. It has no story and no soul within it. Instead, aim for something more real than that. If you can look upon yourself today with just a slightly wider heart than before, if you can see another person's struggle with just a little more understanding now, that is already more than enough. That small shift is already meaningful. And that tiny change you make inside may ripple outward in ways you cannot see. It may become the steady vessel of comfort that someone beside you leans on tomorrow. It may become the ground they stand upon when their own vessel cracks and breaks apart. They will remember your patience someday. They will remember your quiet presence. They will carry that feeling inside them for the rest of their entire life. And they in turn will hold that space open for someone else down the road. This is how the vessels of the world expand. One heart making room for another heart. One person choosing compassion over judgment. One moment of patience instead of reaction. One deep breath before the sharp response. One small opening where a wall used to be. That is the whole story right there. That is how the heart grows wider. Not through grand gestures or perfect wisdom, but through the humble daily practice of making a little more room inside for the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being human alongside other humans. Thank you for staying until the very end. I hope something here resonated with you. I hope one small idea found its way in through whatever cracks you carry right now. If it did, then your vessel just grew. Even just by a fraction, it grew today. And that is something worth holding on to.